Frank Clinton built an empire on loyalty, yet the woman who taught him love would become the one he couldn't trust. When a maid's desperate confession shattered the illusion of his perfect engagement, the Mafia boss discovered that the cruelest prison isn't made of concrete and steel, it's built from the lies of someone you'd die for. Some men lose fortunes to rivals. Frank lost everything to the one person he tried to own. And in his world, love doesn't forgive. It destroys. If you've been hooked up to this moment, please, I would need your help as I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers within a few days. Consider subscribing and let us know where you are watching from. Your support helps us breathe life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now, let's dive back into the story. Frank Clinton's penthouse overlooked Chicago like a throne room surveying conquered territory. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city's glittering sprawl, each light representing someone who owed him money, favors, or fear. He stood with his back to it all, watching Sophia instead. She was perched on the edge of his leather sofa, barefoot, wearing one of his shirts that swallowed her frame. A stack of wedding invitations sat beside her laptop, and she was somehow managing both with the precision of a surgeon performing a double bypass. The engagement ring on her finger, a flawless 3-carat diamond that cost more than most people's homes, caught the light every time she moved her hand. "Your mother called again," Sophia said without looking up. "4th time this week." Frank's jaw tightened. Elena Clinton. The woman who'd raised him in a cramped apartment in Little Italy, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him fed, who'd cried when he bought her the brownstone in Lincoln Park. The woman who now, apparently, called his fiancée instead of him. What did she want? To remind you that Sunday dinners are non-negotiable. Her words. Sophia finally glanced up, her brown eyes amused. She also mentioned something about you being too big for your expensive britches. I didn't know people still said britches. My mother's vocabulary is stuck in 1985. Your mother is delightful. Sophia returned to her laptop. Unlike you, who forgets to call his own mother. There it was again. That casual way she checked him, as if he were any other man and not someone who could have her disappeared with a phone call. Not that he would. Not that he could, not anymore. Somewhere along the way, Sophia Andy had become the one person in Chicago Frank Clinton couldn't intimidate, manipulate, or live without. I'll call her tomorrow, he said. You'll see her Sunday. I already confirmed we're coming for dinner. We? Sophia's fingers paused over her keyboard. When she looked at him, there was something softer in her expression, something that still made his chest constrict in that terrifying way. Frank, I'm going to be your wife in 3 months. That makes her my family too. Of course I'm coming. He crossed the room and sat beside her, close enough to smell her shampoo, something floral and completely at odds with his world of cigars and gunpowder. You don't have to do this. Play the dutiful daughter-in-law, I mean. This isn't a normal engagement. There's nothing normal about marrying a criminal. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. But I said yes, anyway. So here we are. Here we are, he echoed. What Frank didn't say, what he couldn't say, was that doubt had been growing in his mind like a cancer. Small things. Inconsistencies. The way Sophia had been so eager to help him fix his relationship with his mother. How she'd volunteered to handle Elena's needs, to check on her, to be the bridge between them. At first, he thought it was love. Now, 3 weeks before the wedding, he was starting to wonder if it was something else entirely. His phone buzzed. A text from Rico, his head of security, need to talk. Private. Now. Frank stood, kissing the top of Sophia's head. Work. I'll be in my office. She waved him off, already back to her invitations and spreadsheets, the picture of domestic contentment. He paused at the doorway, watching her. She was so beautiful it hurt. So perfect it terrified him. In his office, Rico was waiting, his usually stoic face tight with tension. Boss, we got a problem. Make it quick. Rico held out his phone. On the screen was a surveillance photo, grainy but clear enough. Sophia, standing outside a cafe in Wicker Park. She wasn't alone. The man beside her was an unfamiliar, mid-30s, expensive suit. They weren't touching, but their body language spoke volumes. Intimacy. Familiarity. Who is he? Frank's voice was ice. Still running his face. But boss. Rico hesitated. That's not the problem. Look at the timestamp. Tuesday afternoon. 2:15. The exact time Sophia had told him she was meeting with the wedding planner. Frank's world tilted slightly. Keep digging. And Rico? No one knows about this. Especially not her. When he returned to the living room, Sophia was exactly where he'd left her, bathed in lamplight, looking like salvation itself. She smiled when she saw him, and for a moment, Frank felt the old warmth, the old certainty. Then he remembered the photograph, and the warmth curdled into something cold and calculating. If Sophia Andy was playing him, she'd learn what every enemy before her had learned: Frank Clinton always won. Even if it destroyed him. Especially if it destroyed him. Sunday dinner at Elena Clinton's brownstone was a sacred ritual, one that predated Frank's empire, his wealth, and his carefully cultivated reputation as a man you didn't cross. The smell of marinara sauce greeted them at the door, garlic, basil, and tomatoes simmering with the kind of patience that only Italian mothers possessed. Sophia! Tesoro! Elena emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. She was a small woman, barely 5'2", but she carried herself like someone who'd stared down worse things than mafia bosses. Mostly because she'd raised one. Sophia embraced her warmly, and Frank watched the exchange with the careful attention of a man studying a chessboard. His mother's face lit up in a way it rarely did for him anymore, pure, uncomplicated joy. Mrs. Clinton, something smells incredible. Mama, please. Your family now. Elena held Sophia at arm's length, examining her like a prized heirloom. Though you're too thin. Frank, you're not feeding her? I feed her fine, Ma. Men. Elena rolled her eyes at Sophia, who laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that twisted something in Frank's chest. Come, come. Dinner's almost ready. The dining room was exactly as Frank remembered from childhood: lace tablecloth, mismatched chairs, photographs crowding every surface. His father, dead 20 years now. His grandmother. Aunts and uncles scattered across continents. And there, in the center, a picture of Frank at 8, gap-toothed and grinning, before the world taught him that smiling made you weak. Sophia touched the frame gently. You were adorable. Frank said dryly. Still are, she murmured, but her attention had already shifted to Elena, who was emerging from the kitchen with a massive bowl of pasta. Let me help, Mama. No, you sit. You're a guest. I'm family, remember? Sophia was already taking the bowl, maneuvering it to the table with the easy competence she brought to everything. Frank, grab the wine. Don't just stand there looking menacing. Elena laughed, actually laughed, and Frank felt that cold seed of suspicion bloom a little larger. When did Sophia become so comfortable here? When had his mother started looking at her like she was the daughter Elena never had? Dinner was torture disguised as comfort food. The pasta was perfect, the wine adequate, and the conversation flowed with an ease that felt almost rehearsed. Sophia asked about Elena's garden, her book club, and her friend Carmela's hip replacement. She remembered every detail, followed up on every story, laughed at every joke. She was perfect. That was the problem. Frank, you're quiet tonight, Elena observed, her dark eyes sharp despite her age. Something wrong? Just tired, Ma. He's been working too hard, Sophia interjected smoothly, placing her hand over his. Her touch was warm, familiar. I keep telling him to delegate more. She's right, you know. You'll work yourself into an early grave. Elena shook her head. Like your father. Stubborn. The comparison stung, as it always did. Frank's father had died broke, proud, and alone, having refused every offer of help. Frank had built his empire specifically to be nothing like him, and yet here was his mother, drawing connections between them like an accusatory thread. After dinner, as Sophia helped Elena clear the dishes over Frank's mother's protests, he excused himself to use the bathroom. Instead, he found himself in Elena's bedroom, the door slightly ajar. Old habits, he'd searched rooms for weapons since he was 15. What he found was worse than weapons. On Elena's nightstand, beside her reading glasses and rosary beads, sat a stack of envelopes. Bills, he assumed at first. Then he saw the amounts. 3,000. 5,000. 7,500. All paid. All recent. All in Sophia's handwriting. His fiancée had been paying his mother's bills. Behind his back. For months, based on the dates. Frank's hand trembled as he set the envelopes down, exactly as he'd found them. In the kitchen, he could hear Sophia laughing, his mother's voice warm with affection. Everything he thought he knew was unraveling. And he had no idea if he was witnessing an act of love or the perfect long con. Frank didn't sleep that night. He lay beside Sophia in their king-sized bed, listening to her breathe, studying the curve of her shoulder in the darkness. She'd come to bed smelling like his mother's lavender soap, humming softly, content in a way that made his suspicion feel like poison in his veins. The bills. The mysterious man at the cafe. The too-perfect integration into his mother's life. Either Sophia Andy loved him so much she was secretly taking care of his family, or she was playing the longest game he'd ever seen. In Frank's world, kindness was often just a strategy wearing a prettier face. He needed to know which. By dawn, he'd formulated a plan. By 8 a.m., he'd set it in motion. I have to go to New York, he announced over breakfast, watching her face carefully. Business. 3, maybe 4 days. Sophia looked up from her coffee, surprised. This week? Frank, we have the final cake tasting Thursday, and the florist. You can handle it. He kept his voice casual, disinterested. You're better at that stuff anyway. Something flickered across her face, hurt, maybe, or annoyance, but she smoothed it away with practiced ease. Of course. When do you leave? This afternoon. That's sudden. Welcome to my world. He kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt like betrayal. I'll call you tonight. He wouldn't be in New York. He'd be in his second apartment in Gold Coast, the one only Rico knew about. The one with surveillance equipment and sightlines that covered half the city. For 4 days, he'd watch Sophia without her knowing. See who she really was when she thought he wasn't looking. Frank? Her voice stopped him at the door. I love you. You know that, right? He turned. She was backlit by the morning sun, her hair a dark halo, her expression open and vulnerable. She looked like everything he'd ever wanted and never thought he deserved. I know, he said, and left before she could see his face. The first day, Sophia did exactly what she said she'd do. Cake tasting at 10, florist at 2. She smiled at vendors, made decisions, sent him photos of flower arrangements with messages like which one. I'm leaning toward the peonies and the chocolate ganache is divine. You'd hate it. I'm ordering it. Normal. Domestic. Real. Frank watched the surveillance feeds from his laptop, bourbon in hand, feeling like the worst kind of fool. The second day, things changed. At 11 a.m., Sophia left the penthouse in jeans and a simple sweater, not her usual polished armor. She took a cab to Little Italy, to his mother's brownstone. Frank's pulse quickened. Rico had placed cameras outside Elena's house months ago, standard security protocol. He watched Sophia knock, watched his mother answer with that same warm embrace. They disappeared inside, and Frank switched to the audio feed he'd had with Rico plant in the living room. He told himself it was for his mother's safety. He almost believed it. "Don't have to do this anymore," Elena was saying, her voice strained. "Sophia, tesoro, you've already done too much. It's not enough." Sophia's voice was firm. "Mama, you raised the man I love. You worked yourself to exhaustion for him. Let me do this. Please. He'll be angry if he finds out." A pause. Then, "Frank doesn't need to know everything. Some gifts aren't about recognition. They're just love." Frank's hand tightened around his glass. The bourbon suddenly tasted like ash. "You're too good for him," Elena said softly. "My son, he's done things, terrible things. You know this, yes?" "I know exactly who he is." Sophia's voice didn't waver. "And I love him anyway. Maybe that makes me crazy, but—" "It makes you family," Elena interrupted. "Real family. Not like those vultures who circle him for money and power. You see him. The boy I raised, underneath all that armor." Frank closed his laptop. He'd wanted to catch her in a lie. Instead, he'd caught her in the truth. And somehow, that felt infinitely more dangerous. Frank returned to the penthouse on the fourth day, guilt gnawing at him like a living thing. He'd spent 72 hours spying on the woman he loved, searching for betrayal, and found only evidence of her devotion. The mysterious man from the cafe? Sophia's cousin, visiting from Atlanta. Rico had confirmed it within hours. He was a fool. Worse, he was the kind of man his mother had warned him he'd become. Suspicious. Paranoid. Unable to accept love because he'd spent so long trading in hate. "Sophia," he called, setting down his briefcase. The penthouse was quiet, unusually so. No laptop clicking, no music, no warm greeting. Then he heard it, muffled crying from the bedroom. His blood went cold. Frank moved fast, hand instinctively reaching for the gun he kept holstered at his back. He found Sophia on the bathroom floor, knees drawn to her chest, mascara streaming down her face. Her phone lay shattered beside her. What happened? He was beside her in seconds, hands on her shoulders, scanning for injuries. "Who hurt you? Tell me now." She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment, she seemed like she might break completely. Then she laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You did, Frank. You happened." His stomach dropped. "Sophia. Your mother's housekeeper, Rosa, called me." Her voice was ice-wrapped in pain. "Want to guess what she told me?" Frank's mind raced. Rosa. He'd known her since childhood, a quiet woman who'd worked for Elena for 20 years. What could she possibly? "She said your mother hired her to test me." Sophia's words came out jagged. "Elena wanted to see if I'd treat the help with respect. If I was really good enough for her precious son." The room tilted. "What?" "All these months, Rosa's been watching me. Reporting back. Every conversation, every interaction. Your mother's been running a background check on my character." She laughed again, that awful sound. "And the worst part? I passed. Rosa called to tell me I passed her little examination. Like I'm a student who earned a gold star for basic human decency." Frank felt his world shifting, pieces rearranging into a pattern he didn't want to see. "Sophia, my mother wouldn't." "Wouldn't she?" Sophia stood, unsteady, pushing past him. "You think I don't know what I am to your world, Frank? An outsider. A secretary who climbed above her station. I've been auditioning for the role of your wife like I'm competing for a part in a play. That's not true. Isn't it?" She spun to face him, fury replacing tears. You know what Rosa told me? That your mother said, we have to be sure. Too many women want him for his money. As if I'm some gold digging, her voice cracked. I've been paying her bills, Frank. Visiting her. Loving her. And she's been testing me. The betrayal in her eyes was a knife to his chest. Frank reached for her, but she stepped back, putting the bed between them like a barricade. Don't. I need to think. Sophia, listen. No, you listen. Her voice dropped to something dangerous. I have loved you through everything. Your violence, your darkness, the blood on your hands. I've never asked you to be anyone but yourself. And this whole time, your family has been treating me like a threat that needs to be vetted. She grabbed her purse, her keys. Where are you going? Away from you. Away from all of this. She paused at the door, her hand trembling on the knob. Here's a question for you, Frank. If your mother didn't trust me, what does that say about you? Did you know? Did you tell her to do this? No. God, no. Sophia. But she was already gone, the door slamming with the finality of a gunshot. Frank stood in the silence, his empire suddenly feeling like a prison, and for the first time in his adult life, he had no idea how to fix what he'd broken. Have you ever felt tested by the people you loved most? What would you do if you discovered your trust was being measured in secret? Frank arrived at his mother's brownstone like a storm given human form. He didn't knock. The door nearly came off its hinges. Francesco. Elena stood in the hallway, hands flying to her chest. What in God's name? Tell me it's not true. His voice was lethal, controlled. The same voice he used before ordering executions. Tell me you didn't have Rosa spy on Sophia. His mother's face went carefully blank, the same expression she'd worn when the police came asking about his father's associates. When she knew the truth would cost her. Come inside. Sit down. I don't want to sit. I want answers. But he followed her into the kitchen anyway, because even murderers and monsters still obeyed their mothers. Some programming went too deep. Elena put on the espresso maker, moving with deliberate calm that only enraged him further. Rosa called her. Yes, Ma. Rosa called my fiancée to tell her she'd passed your test. Like Sophia's some kind of, he couldn't finish. The anger was choking him. I did what I had to do. Elena's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You want the truth? Here it is. You're my son. My only child. And you've built a life where everyone wants something from you. Money. Power. Protection. Women throw themselves at you because of what you have, not who you are. Sophia isn't like that. I know that now. Elena poured 2 tiny cups of espresso with steady hands. But 6 months ago? A year ago? How was I supposed to know? You've had women before, Francesco. Beautiful women. Smart women. They all had the same look in their eyes, calculation. Like they were already spending your money before you'd given them a ring. Frank's jaw clenched. She wasn't wrong. There had been others. Models, socialites, even a senator's daughter. All relationships built on transaction, not tenderness. So you decided to test her? Behind my back? I asked Rosa to pay attention. That's all. Elena handed him the espresso. He didn't drink it. To watch how Sophia treated people when she thought no one was watching. How she spoke to servers, to vendors, to the mailman. Small kindnesses reveal the character, Francesco. Your father taught me that. Don't. He slammed the cup down. Don't invoke Papa to justify this. Your father was a good man who trusted the wrong people. It destroyed him. Elena's voice cracked, just slightly. I won't watch the same thing happen to you. I won't bury another man I love because he couldn't see betrayal coming. The kitchen went silent except for the espresso maker's dying hiss. Frank stared at his mother, really looked at her for the first time in months. She'd aged. Gray streaked her dark hair more prominently now. The lines around her eyes had deepened. She looked like what she was, a widow who'd survived poverty, violence, and her son's transformation into the very thing she'd prayed he'd never become. She's been paying your bills, Frank said quietly. Did you know that? Elena's face crumbled. I told her not to. I begged her. But she said, her voice broke. She said you deserved to have people who loved you without needing anything in return. That you'd spent your whole life being used, and she wanted to give you something pure. Frank felt something crack inside his chest. And you still tested her. Because love makes you blind, figlio mio. And blind men get killed in your world. Elena reached across the table, grabbing his hand with surprising strength. But I was wrong. Rosa told me everything. How Sophia never once complained, never once treated her as less than. How she remembered Rosa's daughter's name, asked about her schooling, and slipped her extra money for Christmas. She did? She did. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Your Sophia has a good heart, Francesco. The kind that's rare. Precious. And I've hurt her. I've hurt you both. I'm sorry. Frank pulled his hand away. Sorry doesn't fix this, Ma. I know. Elena wiped her eyes. But maybe the truth does. Go to her. Tell her everything. Tell her about the surveillance, the suspicion, all of it. If her love is real, and God help me, I believe it is, she'll forgive you. And if she doesn't? His mother's smile was sad, ancient. Then you'll learn what I learned when your father died. That some losses we carry forever. But at least you'll have tried. Frank stood, his entire body heavy with exhaustion. She walked out. I don't even know where she went. She went to the Conrad Hotel. Suite 412. At his shocked look, Elena shrugged. Rosa called me too. Said Sophia was crying when she checked in. Alone. Frank was already moving toward the door. Francesco? His mother's voice stopped him. When you find her, don't lead with anger or pride. Lead with truth. It's the only currency that matters in love. He didn't answer. He was already gone. The Conrad Hotel loomed against Chicago's skyline like a monument to luxury and loneliness. Frank stood in the lobby, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking more like a man headed for a funeral than a reunion. His reflection in the polished marble, tattoos visible at his collar, expensive suit rumpled, eyes hollow, reminded him of his father in those final days. Defeated. Humans. He took the elevator to the 4th floor, each second an eternity. Suite 412. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What if she wouldn't listen? What if he'd already destroyed the only real thing he'd ever had? The door opened before he decided. Sophia stood there in a hotel robe, her hair wet from the shower, face bare of makeup. She looked younger. More vulnerable. More beautiful than he'd ever seen her. How did you? She stopped herself. Your mother. Can I come in? She studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside wordlessly. The suite was pristine, untouched except for a half-empty bottle of wine on the nightstand and her phone, a replacement, he noticed, charging by the bed. I talked to my mother, Frank began. Good for you. Her voice was flat, emptied of the warmth he'd taken for granted. Did she confirm she's been treating me like a corporate merger that needed due diligence? Yes. The word felt like swallowing glass. And I need to tell you something. Something worse. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Worse than being secretly investigated by my future mother-in-law? Frank forced himself to hold her gaze. If he was going to lose her, and he probably was, she deserved the whole truth. I had you follow. Before I knew about my mother. I saw you at that cafe with a man, and I thought, he exhaled shakily. I thought you were playing me. Using me. The silence that followed could have cut diamonds. You had me followed. Her voice was dangerously quiet. For 4 days. While I told you I was in New York, I was watching surveillance feeds. I had Rico investigate. I listened to conversations between you and my mother through hidden microphones. Each confession felt like self-immolation. I violated your privacy, your trust, everything. Because I'm a paranoid bastard who doesn't know how to accept that someone might actually love me. Sophia walked to the window, her back to him. Her shoulders were rigid. What did you find? That you're exactly who you've always been. That you were taking care of my mother because you love me. That the man at the cafe was your cousin. That every suspicion I had was poison I created in my own mind. And Rosa? Your mother's test? I didn't know about that. I swear on everything. Your word means nothing right now, Frank. She spun to face him, and her eyes were dry. That was somehow worse than tears. Do you understand what you've done? Both of you? I've spent months trying to be enough. Trying to fit into your world without losing myself. Loving your mother, planning our wedding, pretending I don't see the blood under your fingernails. And the entire time, you both were waiting for me to fail. That's not. It is. Her voice cracked. You know what the worst part is? I would have understood if you'd just asked. If you'd said, Sophia, I'm scared. I don't trust easily. Help me believe this is real. I would have given you anything, bank statements, character references, a lie detector test. Whatever you needed. But instead, you treated me like an enemy combatant. Frank felt his throat close. You're right. I know I'm right. So what now? The question came out broken. Do I leave? Do you walk away? Do we? I don't know. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself. I came to this hotel because I needed space to think. To figure out if I could marry a man who doesn't trust me. Who comes from a family that treats love like a business transaction. My mother was trying to protect me. I know that too. And honestly, I understand it. Your father trusted the wrong people, and it killed him. Your mother watched it happen. She's traumatized. Sophia's expression softened, just slightly. But Frank, if we're going to do this, if we're going to actually get married, we can't start from a foundation of surveillance and suspicion. That's not love. That's a hostage situation with better jewelry. Despite everything, Frank almost smiled. Even now, she could make him feel human. Tell me how to fix this, he said. Please. I'll do anything. Sophia looked at him for what felt like forever. Then she said the 7 words that broke him completely. I don't know if you can. Frank Clinton had negotiated with cartel leaders, stared down federal prosecutors, and orchestrated takeovers that left grown men weeping. But standing in that hotel suite, watching the woman he loved look at him like he was a stranger, he had no strategy. No leverage. No play. There has to be something, he said, and hated how desperate he sounded. Sophia, please. I know I don't deserve it, but... That's the problem, Frank. You think this is about deserving. About earning back points you've lost. She moved to the minibar, poured herself vodka straight. Didn't offer him any. This is about fundamentally who we are. You're a man who trusts no one. I'm a woman who needs to be trusted. That's not a problem you can solve with grand gestures or apologies. Then what do you want me to do? Just give up? Maybe. She drank, winced. Maybe that would be kinder. For both of us. The words hit like bullets. Frank had been shot twice in his life, once in the shoulder, once in the thigh. This felt worse. This felt fatal. I love you, he said, because it was all he had left. I know. Sophia's smile was heartbreaking. That's what makes this so awful. I believe you do love me, in your way. But Frank, your love comes with surveillance equipment and background checks. It comes with your mother testing my character like I'm applying for security clearance. Is that really what you want? A marriage built on investigations instead of faith? No. God, no. He ran his hands through his hair, the careful style he maintained every day now destroyed. I want what we had. Before all this. When it was just us, and you made me feel like maybe I wasn't completely damned. We can't go back to that. That version of us was built on a lie, my ignorance of your suspicion. She set down the glass. And there's something else. Something I haven't told you. Frank's stomach dropped. What? The night you proposed, before I said yes, I almost said no. Her voice was steady now, clinical. Because I knew what I was signing up for. A life with a man who operates in shadows. Who solves problems with violence. Whose mother lost her husband to this world and lives every day terrified of losing her son the same way. You never said. Because I talked myself into it. I told myself that love could survive anything. That you were worth the risk. She laughed, bitter. But I was naive. I thought the danger would come from outside, rival families, FBI investigations, bullets with your name on them. I never thought it would come from you. From inside the relationship itself. Frank felt his world collapsing in real time. So that's it? We're done? I didn't say that. Hope flared, dangerous and desperate. Then what are you saying? Sophia walked to the bed, sat down heavily. I'm saying I need time. Real time, not 4 days of you pretending to be in New York while you spy on me. I need space to figure out if I can live with your version of love. And you, she looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed but determined. You need to figure out if you can actually change. If you can learn to trust without verification. To love without insurance policies. How much time? I don't know. A week. A month. Maybe until the wedding date comes and goes. She pulled off her engagement ring, the 3-carat symbol of his claim on her, and set it on the nightstand. I'm not saying, goodbye, forever, Frank. But I am saying, goodbye, for now. The ring sat there between them like an accusation. Keep it, Frank said quietly. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, it's yours. Only yours. It was only ever meant for you. Sophia's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled over, silent and devastating. Get out. Please. Before I do something stupid like forgive you too soon. He moved to the door, each step agony. His hand on the knob, he turned back one last time. For what it's worth, you were right. Everything I owned disappeared the moment I tried to own you. The penthouse feels empty. The city looks different. My whole empire means nothing if you're not in it. He paused. You were never something to be possessed, Sophia. You were supposed to be my partner. My equal. And I forgot that. I'm sorry. I know you are, she whispered. That's why this hurts so much. Frank left, closing the door with care, and walked back into his life, a life that suddenly felt like a mausoleum dedicated to his own worst instincts. What would you sacrifice to prove your love was real, your pride, your control, or the very thing that makes you feel safe? 3 days passed like years. Frank existed in a fog of bourbon and regret, letting his empire run itself while he haunted the penthouse like a ghost. Rico brought updates, business as usual, no threats, everything under control. Frank barely listened. What did territories and profit margins matter when the only territory he'd wanted had declared independence? On the 4th day, Rosa appeared at his door. She was smaller than he remembered, gray-haired and timid, clutching her purse like a shield. Frank almost didn't let her in. His mother had probably sent her with some message about patience or faith, but something in her face stopped him. Fear. Real, trembling fear. "Mr. Clinton, I need to talk to you." "About Miss Sophia." She swallowed hard. "About what I did." Frank stepped aside. Rosa entered like she was walking into a confessional, perching on the edge of his leather sofa as if it might bite her. "My mother already explained," Frank said, his voice rough from disuse. "You were reporting back. Watching Sophia. Testing her character." "No." Rosa's voice was barely audible. "That's what your mother thinks. But it's not the whole truth." The room temperature seemed to drop. Frank sat down slowly, every instinct suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" Rosa's hands twisted in her lap. "Mrs. Clinton asked me to pay attention, yes. To notice how Miss Sophia treated people. But tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. "I took it too far. I made things up." "What's up?" "Small things at first. I told Mrs. Clinton that Miss Sophia was impatient with me once when she wasn't. That she'd made a rude comment about the house being dusty when she'd actually complimented how clean it was." Rosa was shaking now. "I wanted Mrs. Clinton to keep me on. To need me. My daughter's tuition, you see, and I thought if I could make myself valuable, indispensable." "You lied about Sophia." Frank's voice was deadly quiet. "To my mother." "Yes. God forgive me, yes." Rosa looked up at him, eyes pleading. "But then Miss Sophia started visiting more. Started talking to me like I was a person, not furniture. She asked about Maria, my daughter. Remembering her birthday. Slipped me money when she thought no one was looking." Her voice broke. "She was so kind. So genuinely, impossibly kind. And I was poisoning her reputation with your mother for job security." Frank stood, pacing to keep from putting his fist through the wall. "What changed?" "Last week, Miss Sophia found out Maria got accepted to Northwestern. Full scholarship. She was so happy for us, happier than my own family." Rosa wiped her face with shaking hands. "She hugged me, Mr. Clinton. Cried with me. Said Maria must be brilliant and I must be so proud. And I realized what I'd done. That I'd been sabotaging a good woman because I was scared and selfish. So you called her. Told her she passed the test. I wanted to come clean. To tell her everything." Rosa's voice was desperate now. "But I panicked. I made it sound like it was just Mrs. Clinton's doing, like I was just following orders. I thought if Miss Sophia believed it was all your mother's idea, maybe she wouldn't hate me. Wouldn't get me fired." Frank felt sick. "Does my mother know you lied?" "I told her yesterday. She fired me immediately." Rosa stood, trembling. "But before I left, she made me promise to tell you the truth. She said," a sob escaped her. "She said Miss Sophia deserves someone to fight for her properly. With the whole truth, not half measures." Frank's mind raced. Sophia thought Elena had systematically tested her character. The reality was worse and better simultaneously. His mother had asked for observations, but Rosa had manufactured a narrative of suspicion that never fully existed. "There's more," Rosa whispered. "The worst part. Tell me." The day I called Miss Sophia, before I told her about the test, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking to someone, a doctor, I think. She was asking about postponing an appointment. Something about waiting until after the wedding because she didn't want to worry you. Frank's blood turned to ice. What kind of appointment? I don't know. She saw me listening and hung up quickly. But Mr. Clinton, Rose's eyes were desperate. She looked scared. Really scared. I think Miss Sophia might be sick, and she's been hiding it because she didn't want to burden you during everything else. The room spun. Sophia, sick. Sophia, carrying some medical burden alone while dealing with his betrayal, his mother's test, and Rose's lies. Frank moved to the door, grabbed his keys. Mr. Clinton, I'm so sorry. You should be. He turned, and Rosa flinched at whatever she saw in his face. But right now, I don't have time for your guilt. I have to find her. I have to. He didn't finish. He was already running. Frank broke every traffic law between the penthouse and the Conrad Hotel. His phone calls went straight to voicemail. This is Sophia, leave a message, her voice a ghost that haunted every unanswered ring. The front desk confirmed she'd checked out that morning. Destination unknown. He tried her apartment. Empty. Her office, the one she'd kept even after moving in with him, her escape hatch, she'd called it, laughing. Nothing. Panic tasted like copper in his mouth. Rico found her 3 hours later. Not through surveillance or threats, but through something simpler. He'd asked Sophia's assistant, bringing coffee and kindness instead of intimidation. Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Rico said quietly. She checked in this morning. Oncology wing. The word oncology hit Frank like a bullet he'd always known was coming. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Frank moved through the corridors on autopilot, past families huddled in waiting rooms, past doctors with tired eyes, past all the machinery of modern medicine that promised miracles but delivered mostly hope and heartbreak in equal measure. Room 847. The door was slightly ajar. Sophia sat on the examination table in a thin hospital gown, her feet dangling, looking impossibly small. A doctor stood beside her, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, holding a tablet. They both looked up when Frank entered. Frank. Sophia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. How did you? Doesn't matter. He moved to her side, ignoring the doctor's surprised look. His hand found hers, gripped tight. What's wrong? What's happening? The doctor glanced at Sophia, who nodded wearily. I'm Dr. Patel. I've been treating Sophia for the past 4 months for stage 2 breast cancer, Sophia finished, her voice clinical. Detached. BRCA1 mutation. Caught it early during a routine mammogram. I've been doing chemotherapy, preparing for a lumpectomy scheduled for next week. Frank felt the floor disappear beneath him. 4 months. You've been dealing with this for 4 months? Yes. While planning our wedding. While taking care of my mother. He couldn't finish. The surveillance, the suspicion, the betrayal. All of it while she'd been fighting cancer alone. I didn't want to tell you. Sophia pulled her hand away gently. You had enough to deal with. Business rivals, FBI investigations, keeping your empire from imploding. I thought I could handle this myself, deal with it quietly, and be fine by the wedding. You thought, Frank's voice cracked. Sophia, this is cancer. You don't handle cancer quietly. Why not? You handle everything else alone. I learned from the best. The bitterness in her voice was acid. Besides, I knew what would happen if I told you. You'd go into fix-it mode. Call in specialists, throw money at the problem, try to control what can't be controlled. And I needed to face this on my own terms, with my own strength. Dr. Patel cleared her throat diplomatically. I'll give you two some privacy. Sophia, I'll be back in 20 minutes to discuss the surgical options. She left, closing the door with careful softness. The silence that followed was suffocating. Why didn't you trust me? Frank finally asked, and hearing his words, reflected back at him, made him want to laugh or scream or both. That's what you're thinking, isn't it? That I'm a hypocrite. I spent weeks not trusting you, and now I'm angry you didn't trust me. Yes. Sophia's eyes met his, dark and exhausted. You want to know the real reason I didn't tell you? Because I was terrified you'd see me as weak. As damaged. As something that needed fixing instead of someone who needed partnership. That's insane. Is it? She slid off the examination table, the hospital gown swallowing her frame. She'd lost weight. How had he not noticed? Frank, your entire identity is built on control. On protecting what's yours. If I'd told you I was sick, you would have wrapped me in bubble wrap and locked me in a gilded cage. You would have loved me so hard it would have suffocated me. So instead you suffered alone. Yes. Because at least alone, I could make my own choices. Fight my own battle. Her voice softened. But I was going to tell you. After the surgery. After I knew the outcome. I had this whole plan. I'd present you with the all-clear results as a wedding gift. Proof that I was strong enough for your world. Frank felt something break inside him that he hadn't known was still intact. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Cancer or no cancer. Sick or healthy. You've always been strong enough. Then why did your mother need to test me? Why did you need to surveil me? Tears finally spilled over, and Sophia didn't wipe them away. If I was always enough, why did everyone keep checking to make sure? Because we're broken. The admission tore out of him. My mother, we're so damaged by this life that we can't recognize real love when it's standing right in front of us. We turn everything into a transaction, a test, a threat assessment. And you, his voice cracked. You deserved better than both of us. Sophia looked at him for a long moment, her face a landscape of pain and possibility. Then she reached for him, pulled him close, and Frank felt her heartbeat against his chest, steady, alive, fighting. I still love you, she whispered into his shoulder. God help me, I still love you. But Frank, we can't do this, any of this, if we don't learn to trust each other. Really trust. Not just in the good moments, but in the terrifying ones too. Then trust me now. He pulled back, cupped her face in his hands. Let me be there for your surgery. Let me hold your hand through recovery. Not because I'm trying to control you, but because that's what people who love each other do. They show up. Even when, especially when, it's scary. And your mother? Is going to apologize to you properly. On her knees if necessary. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Rosa confessed everything. The lies she told, the manipulation. My mother fired her immediately and wanted you to know the truth, that she never doubted you as much as Rosa made it seem. She was just scared of losing me the way she lost my father. Sophia absorbed this processing. And you? Are you still scared I'm playing you? No. The word came easily, finally. I'm scared of losing you. There's a difference. One's about suspicion. The other's about love. A weak smile touched her lips. Look at you. Using emotional vocabulary. Dr. Patel would be proud. Is that a yes? Will you let me stay? Sophia was quiet for so long Frank thought he'd lost. Then, on one condition. Anything. No more secrets. Not from you, not from me. We tell each other everything, the scary stuff, the vulnerable stuff, the things that make us feel weak. Deal? Frank kissed her forehead, gentle as prayer. Deal. And Frank? If we're doing this, if we're really building a life together, it can't be about ownership. I'm not something you possess. I'm someone you choose. Every day. Even on the days I'm difficult or sick or broken. Especially those days. He smiled, tasting salt from her tears or his, he couldn't tell anymore. Everything I owned disappeared the moment I tried to own you. But maybe that's the point. Maybe love isn't about owning anything. It's about showing up empty-handed and building something together. Dr. Patel knocked, entering with careful timing. Ready to discuss next steps? Sophia looked at Frank. He squeezed her hand. We're ready, she said. And for the first time in his entire carefully constructed life, Frank Clinton believed in something he couldn't control, couldn't buy, and couldn't force into submission. He believed in them. Epilogue. 6 months later, Frank stood in the same hospital, but this time in the chapel rather than the oncology wing. It was small, intimate, just his mother, Rico, Sophia's assistant, and a handful of people who'd earned their place through love rather than obligation. Sophia walked toward him in a simple white dress, her hair grown back in soft curls from the chemo, a small scar visible where her lumpectomy had been. She'd never looked more beautiful. Elena was crying. Genuine tears this time, no tests or conditions attached. Are you sure about this? Sophia whispered when she reached him, eyes dancing with humor and challenge. Never been more sure of anything, Frank replied. Even though I'm difficult and occasionally cancerous? Especially because of that. He grinned. Turns out I don't want to be perfect. I just want something real. The priest cleared his throat. They turned, hands clasped, and built their empire on the only foundation that mattered, trust earned through truth, love proven through presence, and two broken people choosing each other, not despite their scars, but because of them. Outside, Chicago glittered in the autumn sun. Inside, Frank Clinton finally understood what his father never had, that real power wasn't measured in territory or fear. It was measured in moments like this, standing beside someone who'd seen your darkness and chose your light anyway. Everything he'd owned had disappeared the moment he tried to own her. And in losing everything, he'd gained the only thing that mattered. The end. Looking back, when have you had to choose between control and connection? Share your story in the comments below.